Hey, the high school dropout, still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today. At the reunion, I bumped into a classmate who used to mock me for being poor back in school. Despite us both being grown adults now, the moment he spotted me, he unbelievably held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout. This guy hasn't changed one bit since those days. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment. I've made up my mind, decided about what I declared something ruthless to the classmate who mocked me. Then his eyes widened and his face turned pale rapidly. Well then, let's start my counterattack in full. My name is Kevin. Raised in a typical family with a self-employed father and a stay-at-home mother, my childhood was free from significant hardships. After school, I tossed my backpack and play in the neighborhood park with friends until dusk. But things changed when I entered middle school. My father stopped coming home due to his work. It was normal for my dad to come home after I had gone to bed and leave early in the morning. I just assumed it was normal for him not to be around much. But on his rare days off, he did try to provide some family time, like going for drives nearby or taking us to amusement parks. And then it was just my mom and me. Mom, are you okay? One late night as I got up to use the bathroom, I saw her sighing repeatedly while looking at the household budget book. Yeah, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about anything, she said with a smile. But her face was visibly worn. Lately, there had been changes at the dinner table. The number of side dishes had decreased, and the fruits that used to be a staple were now gone. The lunches she packed for me each morning also changed, mostly just plain rice with a small amount of pickles or simmered dishes. One day, Brad caught sight of my meager lunch and started picking on me. Your dad ran off in the night, leaving your family behind, didn't he? I heard it from my dad. That's why you bring such lame lunches, right? It's hilarious, he said, laughing with his cronies. I was so angry I almost lashed out, but the image of my mom's smiling face came to mind and I clenched my fists to hold back. I don't want to cause trouble for Mom. Brad was the son of the president of Bradley Merchandising, a well-known food company in the area, and was seen by teachers as a model student due to his good behavior. In reality, however, he was a terrible guy who used his father's status and connections to bully others. If anyone stood up to him, they became his target. Fearing this, my classmates gradually distanced themselves from me, turning a blind eye to how I was treated. Encouraged by this, Brad's teasing only escalated, and finally, I reached my breaking point. It was lunchtime as usual. I sat in my usual spot, a secluded corner of the staircase, eating my lunch. Hey, who's Kevin? Brad yelled. Yo, Brad, I replied. Brad approached me with a sneering smile. I usually ignored him, but he didn't like that and took an unexpected action. Typical peasant's lunch looks as bad as ever, he said, reaching for my lunchbox. Hey, what are you doing? I impulsively knocked Brad's hand away. Ouch, you sorry, but he suddenly reached for it. Then Brad snatched my lunchbox and slammed it onto the floor. The rice and leftover meat and potatoes from last night scattered in a sad mess. I pictured my mother's sad face. What the heck are you doing? I shouted, grabbing Brad by the collar. Think you can hit me? You know what'll happen if you do, he said with a smug look, seeing his triumphant face. I lost all restraint. Before I knew it, I was on top of Brad, his handsome face red and swollen, his lips split. Both of us were breathing heavily. You'll pay for this. Brad's voice trembled. Hey, what are you two doing? A teacher from student discipline, alerted by the commotion, yelled fiercely and dragged us to the guidance office. I'm so sorry, my mother said, her face pale, bowing repeatedly. This is unacceptable, causing such a disturbance at school. The teacher with a characteristically shiny face and bulging eyes scolded us. No matter how many times I explained, the teacher wouldn't listen, instead fully believing Brad's fabricated story. Brad, as if nothing had happened, vilified me as a violent person. Being the son of a well-known local businessman, he was untouchably supported, facing no consequences. Faced with this blatant injustice, all I could do was endure. After the hellish guidance session, as my mother and I were leaving, the teacher spat out at me. I'm worried about what kind of adult you'll become, always resorting to violence. Can you even become a decent person? Just you watch. But our life became increasingly difficult, with my mom's part-time job not enough to make ends meet. Despite the violent incident with Brad, my mom believed in me to the end. Always kind, my mom was someone I didn't want to burden any further. So with a sole desire to ease her burden, I decided not to pursue college and instead chose to work. Decades have since passed, days whizzing by, seasons changing rapidly, and society evolving at a dizzying pace, brimming with new conveniences. Before I knew it, the familiar streets had transformed, and my bitter, dark adolescent years seemed to fade into the distance. It was around this time that I received an invitation to a middle school reunion. When I saw that letter, the image of Brad's sneering face came back to me. He would undoubtedly be there. Honestly, I wasn't keen on going, but we were all grown-ups now. Surely he wouldn't start anything petty. With that thought, I decided to attend. "Hey Kev, long time no see. You look good." Being called by my nickname by a classmate felt like I was back in middle school. While many had drifted apart after the violence, a few classmates who remained friends through it all were there, and he was one of them. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he said, patting his protruding belly. "You too." As we shared updates and reminisced, a familiar voice rang out. "Hey, you're here too, huh? Wow, Brad, that's you." He seemed quite drunk and was in high spirits. "Brad, you okay?" I was surprised at myself for expressing concern. But Brad, glaring fiercely, retorted, "A bottom feeder like you worrying about me?" I hadn't fallen that low. "Listen up," holding a wine glass, he boasted. "I run Bradley Merchandising. It's wise to stay on my good side." He laughed arrogantly, then peering into my face, he exclaimed, "Hey, the high school dropout, still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today." And with that, Brad held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The surrounding crowd went silent, staring at us in a scene of total chaos. The reunion was completely ruined. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout. He hadn't changed a bit from the times he used his privileged position to cause trouble. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment, all my secret hopes shattered. "Brad, have made up my mind, decided about what to do." To Brad's mocking face, I delivered a stark announcement. "You're fired." The room fell silent for a moment. "Fired? What's that supposed to mean? High school dropout? Can't even speak English?" Brad asked, clearly baffled. But I said seriously, "It means exactly what it sounds like." The crowd began to murmur. A former classmate tapped my shoulder and asked a question that seemed to float in everyone's mind. "So what do you do now?" "I currently work at a food company as renowned as Bradley Merchandising." Wiping my head and face with a handkerchief I took from my pocket, I started explaining. "I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions, and I'm actually working on acquiring your company as the next president. You should know this better than anyone." "What? What are you talking about?" Brad, trying to act tough, had his lips twitching and sweat on his forehead. "President Johnson should have officially contacted you about this, right?" "Johnson? President?" Brad's face turned completely pale. "Yes, I work for Johnson Merchandising, a company my father is the president of. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director, overseeing the entire company. Deciding not to pursue college and instead work was tough, as there were hardly any companies willing to hire someone with only a high school education. I couldn't afford to be choosy anymore. I applied for any job I could find and ended up working part-time at a logistics warehouse. However, the barrier due to my lack of education was thicker than I imagined. Once people learned about my educational background, their attitudes changed, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Would my life end just as a factory Tim, lost in despair? I was returning home from work one day. When I encountered the unexpected, I arrived home to find my father, whom I never thought I'd see again. He looked much older, with white hair mixed in. Despite his weak smile, the sight of him brought a surge of anger, thinking of all the hardships we endured. "You just waltz back now. You have no idea how much we suffered." Then my father tearfully apologized. "I'm sorry, honey Kevin. I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you. No excuse can change the fact that I caused you unnecessary hardship. I'm deeply sorry." My mother and I, without a word, just stared at him. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want to at least apologize to you both in some way, he said. The house was completely silent. Eventually, my mother spoke up. Regardless, I'm thankful you've come back. Things might not go back to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family little by little. But there's a condition. What is it? My father asked. Give this boy a full-time job at your company, my mother said, surprising me. Kevin has been working hard since he decided not to go to high school. He should be enjoying his youth like others his age, but due to his educational background, he struggled to find a full-time position. My mother's face was serious, almost frighteningly so. How much time had passed? I wondered. All right, my father said. Kevin can work at our company, but on one condition. He must take the GED. Understand? There was a sense of earnestness in my father's voice, his concern for my future evident, considering the circumstances. Having to give up high school to work, I stepped up from a factory temp to an employee at a renowned company. Of course, it wasn't easy at first. In fact, it was a continuous struggle. Being the president's son made me a target of envy, and I was often harshly criticized for even minor mistakes. Being new to corporate life, I struggled with understanding business etiquette and social norms. Sweating through every new challenge, my colleagues would just scoff, offering no help. I felt completely isolated at work. Despite this, I worked tirelessly, volunteering for menial tasks and responding earnestly to unreasonable demands from superiors. Seeing documents I worked hard on being thrown into the trash with a smirk, or finding my desk littered with trash, I often thought about quitting. It was disheartening to be judged through the lens of being the president's son. Despite all my efforts, what kept me going was my mother's presence. The mixed emotions she must have swallowed when she asked for me to be hired at my father's company must have been excruciating. For her sake, I had to meet the company's expectations. As I continued to work relentlessly, gradually, people began to recognize my efforts. Slowly, I was accepted as a team member, and this began to reflect in my work results. It possibly provided a healthy stimulus for other employees as the company's sales started to rise year by year. As a result of my hard work, I was recognized and promoted. From this year, I became an executive director entrusted with important tasks. I have been involved in negotiations for the acquisition of Bradley Merchandising, a company that had been on a downward spiral for several years. Kev, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among our classmates. It's going to be awkward just casually inviting you out now. My unexpected identity caused a stir among the crowd. But Brad, still in disbelief, insisted, "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale." Well, it seems your dad, the president, didn't share much about the company's situation with you. It's not surprising you didn't know. But my father was going to make me president. About that, I said, my expression serious. My father instructed me to overhaul the entire management of Bradley Merchandising, from the president down. That's impossible. Brad's face froze. But I didn't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision. Then I heard about the reunion and remembered. You were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here, but as I let out a breath, releasing the disappointment welling up inside, Brad, you hadn't changed at all. Still belittling and blaming others, still full of baseless confidence. That doesn't mean you can fire me. Come on, help me out. We're classmates, right? His attitude had changed drastically from his earlier arrogance, now desperately pleading. But I wasn't going to soften my stance over something like this. I just made a logical decision as a business leader. Running a company isn't as easy as you think, I said firmly, grabbing Brad's shoulders and looking him in the eye. I faced many challenges as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You had more advantages, attending a good high school and graduating from college. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life. Tears held back, my voice shaking as I spoke to Brad, but he just stared back in silence, not uttering a word. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Bradley Merchandising building with my father. Today, we'll officially proceed with the acquisition. I had confided in my father the day before, and after some reluctance, he agreed to my terms. We've been waiting for you, said the president of Bradley Merchandising, greeting us as he entered the meeting room, followed by his son, Brad. Bradley spoke of his intentions to have Brad succeed him as president. Now, about the acquisition, he prompted me to start the discussion. But Brad's behavior was appalling, far from what one would expect from a future president or even a professional. I raised my voice. Hey, Brad, are you even listening? This is about the future of the company. Do you even realize the responsibilities of a president? I don't need to hear that from you, Brad retorted. Then he turned to his father, saying something outrageous. Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence? Brad's suggestion that he was more capable of making beneficial decisions for the company seemed almost delusional. My father, witnessing this, clearly showed a look of exasperation. Even the usually stern face of Bradley grew more severe. Fool. What do you know about our company? He said, his temples throbbing with anger. Brad could only stare back with an expression I had never seen before. Bradley continued unabated by his anger. Kevin's right. Your attitude today is beyond disrespectful. Running a company is not a game. If you're not serious, then leave. Brad's voice was pitifully weak in response to his father's overwhelming presence. The president then stood up, facing us with a serious expression. I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too indulgent with my son, expecting him to become more responsible in the workforce. But I was mistaken. I never imagined he would behave so foolishly, especially in such a setting. To you, the executive director of Johnson Merchandising, and you, Kevin, I apologize for his many discordances. As a parent, I am truly sorry. My father then addressed Bradley. Your feelings are clear, Bradley. The once imposing figure of the food company's president seemed utterly diminished. Bradley, with a desperate look, continued, President Kevin, we need your help to save Bradley Merchandising. We no longer have the strength to continue on our own. If we come under your company's wing, I will step down from all my management roles, and the same goes for the entire board. But please keep our employees, our precious staff, without letting anyone go. With that, he bowed so deeply his forehead nearly touched the table. I looked at my father, who seemed deep in thought, his eyes closed. Dad, I murmured quietly. He nodded solemnly. Bradley, I began, yes, I see how much you care about your company. Given that, let's give you another chance to turn things around. Brad and his father looked shocked. Yes, a chance. If you genuinely care about your employees, there's still something to be done. We'll support you as much as we can. If that fails, we have no choice but to take over completely. Kevin, how can I ever thank you? Beside his tearful father, Brad looked completely drained, as if all the strength had left his body. I continued speaking, glancing between the two. I've always resented my father, I began, causing a look of shock in Brad. He neglected our family under the guise of work, forcing me to give up high school. I aimed to prove him wrong. But my mother, who suffered the most, forgave him. I still vividly remember my mother's resolute face when she chose to forgive. At first, I couldn't understand her. But now I get why she decided to forgive. She taught me the importance of it. I heard my father murmur softly. Kevin said, I am who I am today because my mother forgave my father, and recently, I finally felt like I can forgive him too. Bradley nodded in agreement, feeling as if pushed forward by an invisible force. I continued my thoughts. Everyone deserves a second chance. People become stronger by overcoming adversity, I said, turning to Brad, who was slouched back in his chair with a sulky demeanor. Brad, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up? But I don't know anything about running a company, Brad muttered. I placed my hand on his shoulder. It's okay to start now. Work hard, and the results will follow, Brad, I reassured him. Brad looked at me, a faint smile on his face. For the first time after countless discussions, Bradley Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with Johnson Merchandising and began the path to recovery. Brad became the new president with his father as an advisor. Shedding the pride of being the son of Bradley Merchandising, Brad worked tirelessly to regain the trust of each business partner through humble visits. His transformation inspired the employees, and their mindset began to shift. The company, once complacent under the guise of a large corporation and marred by internal power struggles, saw employees stand up to the challenge. Sales put more effort into their work, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Brad notably enhanced working conditions by revising inclusive welfare policies and eliminating exclusive systems, contributing to a significant turnaround for the formerly struggling Bradley merchandising. Encouraged by the changes in everyone, including Brad, the company's sales gradually climbed like ascending stairs. This year, we were even able to provide bonuses to all employees, albeit modest ones. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, and we've now reached a point where we can sponsor various advertising campaigns. The reunion became a catalyst for rekindling friendships with classmates, I reflected. Initially wary of Brad, they were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. "Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work?" I teased. "It's just a habit," Brad said, scratching his head in embarrassment. "Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working." I forgot what it was. "You used to call me that all the time." "Can't believe you remember that," Brad said, feigning exasperation. "All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink," I proposed with a smile. "That's a good idea." "Okay, Kev," Brad agreed, stopping in his tracks and calling me by the nostalgic nickname. "Thanks, Kev." Human nature tends to cling to negative emotions, and I've been no exception. I resented being looked down upon for being a high school dropout and felt bitter about my social standing. If I hadn't forgiven my father, I might not have reached out to Brad and others. Despite all the harassment from Brad, I couldn't give up on him. Remembering my own struggles, I realized that people who overcome hardships can face any challenge ahead. If you strongly desire to start over, you can change from that point. I plan to lead the company humbly, navigating the challenges of business with dedication alongside my valuable friends and colleagues. My name's Alice, and I'm 26 years old. I'm married to my husband, Rob, who is 4 years older than me. We fell in love at the office where he was my superior in the sales department. He pursued me with unwavering determination. At the time, I was only 24 and felt that marriage was too soon, but he was incredibly passionate, saying things like, "Please just become my wife for now. We can figure out the rest together. I'll make you absolutely happy. No other man in the world wants to make you happier than I do." In the end, his fervor won me over, and I saw in him a man who would take care of me for life. So, I decided to accept his proposal. A year after he began courting me, we got married. Now, we're celebrating our first year of marital bliss. Since it was a workplace romance, it felt a bit awkward, so I decided to change jobs. I'm considering taking a part-time job at a bakery. "That's a good idea," Rob said. "You can also take some cooking classes and enjoy a leisurely life." The truth is, his family is quite affluent. Incredibly, his father bought us an apartment when we got married. I feel a bit guilty about it. "It's okay," Rob reassured me. "Let's take advantage of what our parents can provide. All you have to do is be a good daughter-in-law." Okay, I guess. I've done my best to be a good daughter-in-law, like visiting my in-laws with gifts. "We're just happy that a beautiful girl like Alice has become our daughter-in-law," they said. "That's right," Rob's mother added. "He's a bit of a handful, isn't he? Please take good care of him." "Sure," I replied. They are very kind-hearted in-laws. Of course, my parents are also pleased with this marriage. They warmly welcomed Rob, who is well-educated and on a fast track in his career. "When are you planning on having children?" my mother asked. "It's easier if you start raising them early." "Well, we're thinking about it. It's better to have them sooner rather than later. Raising kids requires a lot of energy." "Well, it's not like I want to go out and party anymore. I guess I'll try to be a good mom." It's nice to be able to talk so candidly with my own mother. I started thinking that it might be better to have children sooner rather than later. In this way, everyone in our family was blessing our marriage, except one person. My older sister, Susan, is not happy about our marriage. She's 6 years older than me, at 32. She has been a white-collar worker for 14 years since graduating high school but has never had a boyfriend. She has always seen me as her adversary since we were little, and it was always a bit scary. I have memories of my sister bullying me ever since I was a toddler. Even as I grew up and became aware of her animosity, her bullying was insidious. She would tear up my notebooks and hide my pencil case, petty pranks that really irked me. The worst was when she'd take the diary I kept hidden in my desk, show it to our parents, and laugh. Though I wasn't writing anything strange, it was still very discomforting. It seemed she didn't like that our parents were fond of me. There was another deciding factor: our looks. To put it modestly, I was born with a well-arranged face that took the best features from both my parents. My sister, on the other hand, didn't look anything like me. She had a plain face, curly hair, and impure skin. It seemed she had a complex about her looks, but I was at a loss about what to do with her antagonistic feelings toward me. Even though I was cute, I wasn't at the level of a model or an actress, just an ordinary level of attractiveness. I always thought that instead of being jealous and mean to me, she should have been trying to make herself prettier. However, she seemed to be feeling her complex deep inside. After graduating from high school, she started working right away and saved up money. Just before turning 20, she underwent plastic surgery. At the time, I was only 14, and I was shocked to see my sister come home with a blue bruise on her face. I thought she had been violently assaulted, but apparently she had undergone plastic surgery on her eyes, nose, lips, and entire facial contour all at once. After a while, when the swelling and bruises subsided, my sister looked like a different person. She still had the look of someone who had plastic surgery, but she was prettier than before. Above all, I thought it was okay as long as she was satisfied. At that time, I believed that since her face had become beautiful, her heart should also become a little more beautiful. Even though we were not very close as sisters, I hoped this change would improve our relationship. When I announced that I was getting married, my sister made a sarcastic remark. "Huh, you're already getting married. Aren't you a fool for selling yourself short?" Once again, I realized that we would never get along. After my wedding, it seemed she had undergone more plastic surgery. Her skin was unnaturally shiny, and her eyes appeared even more double-lidded. Only she knew whether she felt improved or not. Despite our strained relationship, my sister started visiting my house frequently, sometimes even staying over. "Sis, what's up? What's wrong?" "Because you got married first, Mom has been nagging me about finding a partner. I'm just waiting for the right one." "I see. So, it's uncomfortable at home because of me, and now you want to stay here." She even brought her personal belongings with her. It was too forceful and annoying, but I couldn't just kick her out. I assumed she wouldn't visit often since she didn't like me much, but she started coming over at least once a week, sometimes even 2 or 3 times a week. It was becoming a real nuisance. We began having strange living patterns, like having dinner with my husband and her, and drinking together when she brought alcohol at night. I wasn't having much fun, and her presence creeped me out. But for some reason, my husband Rob didn't seem to mind and always welcomed her. I finally asked him, "Hey, aren't you bothered when my sister comes over?" "Nah, not at all. She's a great gal, always bringing little gifts and stuff. The other day when she stayed over, we even went to the train station together. She's really something, isn't she? And boy, she's quite the looker from the side." Side profile: she's had work done, you know. She never brings me any gifts. So many things didn't add up, but seeing him so chummy with her, I couldn't say a word. I tried giving off the "please don't come over anymore" vibe, but my sister didn't catch on. Days went on like this until one day, my husband dropped a bombshell. "Listen, I'm sorry. I'm leaving you, Alice. Susan is pregnant." I couldn't believe my ears. "Say what?" "It's a long story," Rob said, "but I just met with her. She's already 10 weeks along. She even showed me the ultrasound picture." My head was spinning. Ultrasounds out of the blue. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. What the heck is going on? Just as I was about to give my husband a piece of my mind, the doorbell rang. My sister was standing at the entrance of our apartment building. I buzzed her in and invited her inside. It was about time I got an explanation for all this madness. "Oh, Alice," Susan said as she entered. "I know this isn't ideal, but you'll still congratulate me, right?" She pulled out an ultrasound picture from her wallet with a smug look on her face. "Are you out of your mind?" I snapped. "Out of my mind or not, you should face reality. Rob is the father. We've been in love, you see." My husband looked uncomfortable, but his affections were clearly now with my sister. "I'm sorry, Alice, but you're still young. You can start over. Now that things are this way with Susan, I gotta step up to the plate and make her happy. No man alive wants to make her happier than I do," he said, echoing the same line he used when he proposed to me. It seemed he was completely drunk on himself and his forbidden affair, blinded by my sister's pregnancy. Stupid man, I screamed inside my head. My sister was still wearing that smug look on her face. She walked into the room and stood next to my husband like she owned the place. "Rob, let's get on with it," she said. "You know your sister will do the right thing and step aside for her big sis." So many emotions were welling up inside me. My sister had always been the sneaky kind, doing all sorts of nasty things behind my back. This, however, was the ultimate betrayal. When she heard I was getting married, she laughed it off. And now, to add insult to injury, she's taken my husband. At that moment, my feelings for my despicable sister and the man standing next to her turned ice cold. But I thought to myself, I'm not going to let them have their way. There's no way I'm getting divorced. No way, no how, over my dead body. What? My husband exclaimed. Why not? What about the baby your sister is carrying? I couldn't care less. The very idea of you two being involved makes my skin crawl. So he had been seeing her and had the nerve to come and hang out in my room, and the three of us had been breaking bread together. I was beginning to think he was doing it just to tick me off more than anything. I didn't budge an inch. I won't give you what you want. I don't love him anymore, so he's all yours, but no divorce. Go ahead and have your little love child. Excuse me, my sister shot back. You say that to your own sister. You're one to talk, doing this to your own sister. Just pack up and leave. This apartment was bought by Rob's parents, so I have a right to stay. I don't know what planet you're on. You're just the other woman who happens to be pregnant with my husband's child. I'm the one legally married to him. There's no way I'm leaving. Don't you talk back to me, my sister screamed, her face red with anger. Maybe she thought she'd win if she got pregnant. Well, she's got another thing coming. I glared at her. If you keep pushing, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Seeing me stand up to her for the first time, my sister looked a bit shaken and said, Fine. Anyway, Rob will be mine. Keep on struggling. It's pathetic. She stormed off. What a piece of work. I made up my mind not to consider her my sister anymore. Ignoring my husband, I went to the bedroom. He mumbled something outside the door, but I pretended not to hear him and continued giving him the cold shoulder until he gave up and slept on the couch. The next day, I took action. I went to my in-laws to spill the beans, figuring I needed to make the first move before Rob did anything. They were shocked and apologized for their son's behavior. That darn fool. No way in heck we're accepting this. That woman's outrageous too. Oh, sorry, she's your sister, Alice. No, I've decided to cut ties with her. I can't believe she's pregnant with my husband's child. Exactly. We're on your side, Alice. Let us know if you need a lawyer. Thank you. I don't plan to divorce him for the time being. There's no need to give them what they want. Is that okay with you? Absolutely. We're here to clean up our stupid son's mess. I thanked them and left. Next, I went to my parents. I thought my sister might have talked to them, but it seems she didn't have the guts to tell them yet. What? What on earth is she thinking? Gives me a headache. What are you gonna do now? You should come back home. No need to be with that man. Yeah, that's what I'll do. I decided to leave the apartment and go back to my folks. There was no way I was living with that man. He was probably sneaking around with my sister and treating me like a third wheel. I thought to myself that I should play my cards right. My sister didn't come back to her parents when she realized I wasn't returning to the apartment. We essentially swapped houses, but I guess it's fair to say I came out on top for now. I managed to move my stuff out of the condo with the help of my parents, and it seems my sister moved in as soon as I moved out. When I reported this to my in-laws, they were livid. No way we're okay with this. And who do you think put up the money? They went ahead, changed the name on the deed, and just sold the condo. I had to chuckle when I heard about it. My sister and her now husband looked none too pleased as they moved out and rented an apartment. As for me, my husband kept begging me with tears in his eyes, saying, Please agree to the divorce. We have a baby on the way. Do you want to make your sister a single mom? I was adamant. I won't agree to a divorce. That's final, and I didn't budge. He threatened legal action, but I said, Go ahead, make my day. To ensure he didn't file for divorce behind my back, I put in a request to reject any divorce papers. If the other woman had been a stranger, maybe I wouldn't have been so stubborn. But since it was my sister, I knew they'd flaunt the baby to my in-laws and parents, making it impossible to sever ties like you can with strangers. I endured a wicked woman who thought everything would be fine as long as she had a child. I knew I wouldn't move on and find someone else just like that, so I planned to drag this out as long as possible without officially splitting. Then I decided to make a triumphant return to the same workplace as my husband. I reached out to our mutual boss, explained everything, and got my job back. Tough break, but you're still young. You'll bounce back, my colleague said, cheering me on. Since I blabbed to everyone at work about what my husband did, he got the cold shoulder from everyone. Dude, that's messed up. Getting your sister-in-law pregnant. That's some next-level creepiness, they said, and he ended up quitting because everyone was giving him the stink eye. Serves him right. 9 months later, my sister had her baby. Neither set of parents acknowledged her giving birth. My good-for-nothing husband, who painted himself into a corner, told me about it. It's a boy, he said. Oh, really? Given all the plastic surgery she's had, I bet he doesn't look like her, huh? I replied with a bit of sass. Wait, what? Plastic surgery? What do you mean? He asked. But I just said, who knows, and hung up. Turns out my sister, let's call her Susan, ended up having Rob's child without marrying him. They're living together now, but at the end of the day, they're just two unrelated people. She's not even really a common-law wife. It's pathetic that two grown-ups who can't get their parents' blessing are living together and having a kid. What's more, he can't find a job. My sister, who's got a nasty streak, is apparently complaining nonstop because things aren't going her way, and he's so frazzled he can't get hired anywhere. My sister quit her job when she had the baby, and now the two of them are living by draining their savings. But even if they manage to live somewhat normally, cold stares from both sets of parents await them, along with a life where they are whispered about behind their backs by society. I wonder if my sister really liked that husband of hers. Did she do all this just to get at me? If so, I think she's kind of pitiful. We're estranged now, so it doesn't matter to me anyway. As for me, I am finally thinking of giving my good-for-nothing husband the boot. I'm going to go through a lawyer to make sure to claim alimony, and I think it's time for me to get ready for the next chapter in my life. I'm glad I didn't just hand over the role of being his wife when he was over the moon. If I had done that, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. This past year has been really tough, but I'm going to forget all that and move forward.
I'm Tiffany. I worked full-time before I got married. But the truth is that company had terrible places to work. I had nearly 90 hours of extra work that wasn't paid. Even though I was going to be married, I thought about working, but I quit because of health problems. I now follow a healthy routine and go to bed and wake up at normal times. After I quit, my health got a lot better. My husband, Theo, didn't disagree with my choice to quit. He seems to love that I'm home doing jobs and waiting for him to get home from work. Whenever we were first married, he would say, I'm so lucky to have a wife who welcomes me home. That thought had become a given after 5 years, which was to be expected. Things still go wrong every so often. When we visit, my mother-in-law, Sarah, who used to be nice, always asks, when will you give me a grandchild? She always says it when Theo isn't there. Hearing this over and over again for years has caused me a lot of stress. Honestly, the only reason I have any desire to see her is to avoid her company, as she makes me feel awful. John is my father-in-law. He is quiet, nice, and doesn't get in the way. The strange thing is that Theo says kids are a pain and cost a lot. But when his folks find out, he acts like it doesn't matter to him. I once told him, if you don't want kids, tell your parents. He laughed it off and said, isn't that a conversation for a woman? When things need to be done right, he avoids duty by sticking to his own ethics. Thus, in the eyes of his mother, I am the wife who is unable to conceive, whereas he prefers the husband who is able to do so. Finally, I tried to be clear by saying, Theo doesn't want kids. But Sarah, who is sure I can't get pregnant, said, you were just trying to blame someone else. John tells Sarah not to get in the way of our decisions sometimes, but she doesn't listen. Theo finally doesn't want to deal with the stress of being a parent, but he also doesn't want to make his mom mad either. It's clear that he always wants to make his mom happy. I really didn't think he'd be this unstable. He would likely save his mother before me if the ship was sinking. Yes, he's a bit old-fashioned, but at least you're not living with them, my mom says on a call during the week in the afternoon. I've talked to my mom a lot about Theo and Sarah over the past year. My mom is quiet, but she makes sense. She listens slowly and often makes me feel better. At times, I experience guilt due to my belief that a wife ought not to disclose her troubled marriage to her parents. However, my mother is the only one who truly understands this, since Theo is absent. I'm sorry for always talking about this. I know you have your struggles too. It's okay. Mom's fine now. The hospital tests showed nothing wrong. In fact, She just got a pacemaker and had surgery on her heart 3 months ago. I was scared when I learned she was going to have surgery, but she laughed it off. I remember telling my husband about it, and he said, "Pacemakers are pretty common these days. It's not that big of a deal." But when his own mother hurt her ankle, he freaked out and told me he'd help out without being asked first. Talk about having two sets of rules. Putting a bandage on an ankle is not nearly as important as having surgery. I always whine on the phone, and because I live so far away, I don't get to see my family very often. This time, I'm going to surprise my mom on her birthday with a trip with my dad because I haven't been the best daughter to them in the past. I'm home. Dinner's ready. My husband always says as he sits down to eat. No longer does he really say anything about the food, but I was excited about the plan my dad and I made. Actually, my mom's birthday is coming up. "Oh," he said after pausing to eat his steak and taking a puzzled look at me. "I was thinking of booking a hotel in Lake Tahoe and taking a trip there." "Really?" He didn't seem very interested. "The hotel is pretty fancy, and a lot of people like it here. This person helped me a lot." His eyes lit up when he heard the word luxury. "A fancy hotel. We're going to have different rooms from your parents, right?" "Of course we are. They're both going to be there, so why don't we go see some sights in Lake Tahoe together?" "Sure." "Oh well, at least he seems interested. Since he spends most of his time with his parents, he shouldn't mind going on trips with mine every once in a while." Lucky for me, my parents are taking care of everything this time, so I don't have to plan the date or the hotel. It's like I let them handle everything. "Where are you going?" "I need to ask for time off." While I was packing in the bedroom, my husband threw the question over his shoulder. "Did I not tell you? The 23rd and 24th are the dates." "Oh, right." When I turned around, I saw him playing around with his phone without thinking. "It's all the gifts for Sarah that were forgotten, among other things." Of course, today had something to do with my choice. Out of the blue, my angry mother-in-law yelled, "A woman like you who doesn't work or even have kids should be thankful just to be married." I didn't feel scared when I realized I could also cut ties with her. "Look, don't put me down. Also, just so you know, it was your son who didn't want kids because he thought being a parent would be hard." He probably never said that, though. My wife's mother just sat down shocked. She had always thought it was my fault, but she didn't know that her son had made the choice all along. So my father-in-law took my husband and mother-in-law away, and I went on a family trip with my folks. "You had quite the eventful birthday, didn't you?" My mom said, "I'm sorry," in her normal happy voice. "As long as you are happy, that's all that matters." But I had no idea he was that bad. I should have stopped by earlier to see how things were going. I no longer give a damn about it, as I have been living that way for an extended period of time. It was a wake-up call. My dad was pretty quiet, but there was a hint of happiness on his face. After that, my husband and I got a divorce, but it looks like his relationship with his mom has gotten worse. He was never kind, and I was always in charge of everything except his job. It was said that his room turned into a garbage dump without me there. It looks like my ex-mother-in-law cleans up for him often. But she's about to lose it because she fights a lot with her son, who she used to love. The cops were called because their fight got so bad. My ex-father-in-law says she did this to herself by giving their son too many good things. It's interesting that on the day of the hotel incident, my ex-mother-in-law was friendly with the head of a neighborhood organization. Was also taking a break there. He saw all of her crazy behavior. People in her community no longer value her because she is seen as the mother of the husband who forced his wife to leave him. For myself, I landed a job at the hotel that my uncle owns. He hired me without telling anyone that I'm related to the owner because he was looking for work after his split. I'm now learning from staff members who have more experience. The hotel job takes careful attention. There are still things I haven't learned in times when I've been told I was wrong. But it's a big change from the housework I used to do that no one noticed. Everything that is done here is praised. He looked truly angry. "After I get married, my parents should usually come first." "Tell your parents to go home." What? That's correct. From now on, it's just the two of us and our son, my mother-in-law said without missing a beat. I was really hurt. I never thought he would be this way. Where did my kind husband go after we got married? Then a big man in a suit quickly came up to us. Is there a problem? My mother-in-law started talking very quickly before he could finish. Get rid of these people. We'll use their last few nights. I'm sorry, but we can't do that. She snapped. Why not? They have already paid, and we have them booked until the day after tomorrow. She glared at me in anger. She is married to my son. What my son's wife and her parents own is pretty much ours, just a nod from my husband. Every feeling I had at that moment just blew up when I saw that scene. The man said he was sorry, but they couldn't do that. She told him, first of all, you're letting such ugly people stay here. Will it make the hotel look bad? My husband started to blame me. I chose to go behind my husband's back and tell him the truth. You know, this place is my father's family home. My husband and mother-in-law looked at me with wide eyes. The man in the suit is my father's younger brother, which means he is my uncle. My uncle began to talk in a strong but humble way. I'm a lot younger than my brother. People in our family were busy with their hotel business at the time. He looked after me like a parent. He gave me everything I have now. When my dad heard this, he got upset and said, I was so happy when I heard you were staying here because I thought I could finally repay his kindness. You think you can stay for free because it's the family of your son's wife. I could hear my wife's mother groaning. We have rooms that cost between 450 and 1,800 rupees per night. If you're interested, please go to the front desk. Keep the price the same. Both my husband and his mother were shocked. What should we do? There's no other hotel that we know of. What do you think I'll say? My father-in-law let out a deep sigh as he watched them. This is karma for always taking credit for Tiffany's achievements and trying to impress your mother with them. My husband didn't seem to know what to say. I'm really sorry, everyone. He began to say, I never thought my son would do something like this. No, wait, John, I said right away. I also feel sorry for my father-in-law. His son asked him to go to the hotel, but he found out he had been. My mother-in-law seemed to have learned even more, but all of a sudden she got it. Wait, can't you give us a discount since it's a family-run hotel? After all, we're family. How can she have no shame? Has she forgotten everything she did? But my uncle said in a cool voice, I don't think of someone as family who insults my loved ones. What he said made me understand something. It was rude of my husband and mother-in-law to treat me that way all along. I was given all the hard jobs to do. They took any praise they could get. What did I do for them? They took advantage of me and put me down. There would have been no trip if they had even a little thought about my family. You've always looked down on me, haven't you? I looked at my husband, who hung his head and didn't say anything. You thought that if you pushed hard enough, my parents would let this go. That's awful. I didn't have the money to stay at that fancy hotel. I just wanted to make people like me. He glared at me with sadness in his face. My husband's father came up to me and looked upset. Doesn't this sound like you? Who are you trying to protect the most right now, huh? Your mother, who you always want to look good in front of. My husband stood still and had a serious look on his face. Listen, you are married, my father-in-law said next. Protecting your wife should be your top concern, not making your mom proud. Still, Hugh, even though my husband turned away, I saw the look on his face. No matter what, he will always pick his mother. I got up the courage to speak out. John, thanks for everything you've done for me so far. You've helped me more than he ever did. He and I used to live together, but I can't do it anymore. My husband was shocked and looked up. Let's get a divorce. It made me feel so free to say the word divorce out loud. Right, I've always wanted to divorce him. Are you serious? From behind, I could hear my mom's voice. I said yes. Yes, I've been thinking about it for a while now. My husband quickly said, Hold on, I'll say sorry for what happened this time. It's not just about this time. He doesn't really pay attention to me or my family, so I've told him about this trip before. But when he thought about it, His lack of response was better than his previous emotions. We drove to the fancy hotel in Lake Tahoe on the day of the trip. My parents had come the night before. We were going to explore Lake Tahoe with them today and have dinner at the hotel. They haven't been seen in a while. Maybe since my mom had surgery. The two of them are retired and don't normally blow up, so this trip should be fun. I read a Lake Tahoe vacation magazine while sitting in the passenger seat. After I checked in, I was going to call my parents to the office, but they were already in the parking lot, and Sarah was standing next to them. My husband quickly pulled over, parked the car, and ran over to them. What the heck is going on? I was sure that I had explained the plan well. It didn't take me long to get out of the passenger seat and follow. What's going on there? While I was upset, my husband started talking to my parents in a smooth way. You knew about a great hotel, right? From tomorrow on, we're going to enjoy it with my parents. You paid for the stay already, right? Both of my parents were shocked. Of course they would be. This wasn't even supposed to happen. As bold as ever, my mother-in-law said, "You know a lot of good hotels. Take care of it for us, okay? Let's go to Alaska next time." What are you saying? My father-in-law, on the other hand, asked my husband, "Didn't you invite us on this trip?" He seemed to have the same lack of knowledge as we did. You said you pay for it. I could feel my blood rush to my head when I heard that. Wait a second. My parents booked this hotel for us. Why do you just stare you ready to invite yours? What's the big deal? Asked my mother-in-law. You can't keep this nice hotel all to yourself. You should care more about the parents of your husband. Because I don't get to see my parents as often as John and Sarah, I wanted to take them on a fancy trip. Also, my mom's birthday is today. With a really serious look, my mother-in-law looked at me from head to toe. You've never given me a present for my birthday. Such clear favoritism? You did send Sarah her favorite flowers recently, didn't you? That came from your son. Don't take credit for what other people do. When I looked at my husband, he tried to avoid my eyes. While we were married, I chose and gave all of the gifts. He never seemed interested in doing it. So you kept silent about the gift for Sarah. He said something terrible when he looked into my husband's eyes. I'm going to buy them with your money. It's the same as if I had chosen and bought them myself.